Hello and welcome to another podcast episode. Guess what? I've got hay fever. That's something I've never had. Well, I don't think I've ever had hay fever. Where are my notes? Here we are. 15 centigrade. Oh, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, by the way. 15 centigrade, 59 Fahrenheit. 97% humidity. That's because it is lashing with rain, and it has been all night. 1008 millibars on the barometer, and the wind, the flag's soaking wet. But it is sort of making an effort to get a little bit of breeze on it from the west. Dreadful weather. It's rain all night, and apparently it's going to rain all day. Let's not worry about the weather. What's been happening in the UK, in Britain? Well, we've had a general election, as you probably know. Thursday was voting day all over the country, of course, and they weren't allowed to talk about it on the radio or the TV. Bliss. Election, politics free. Politics free all day on the telly and the radio. Fantastic. It's now all over. So, of course, the radio and TV are now jammed, packed, full of politics. Analysing this, analysing that. These votes mean this, those votes mean that. Struth. I've had enough of it. Of course, they'll be analysing everything now for the next 3 weeks. 3 months? Possibly 3 years. So that's that. That's the politics all over, apart from the chatting about it afterwards to see what went wrong, what could have been done better, what went right, and all that rubbish. Let's move on from politics, shall we, to something more interesting. We went to Pulborough Brooks, the RSPB, that's the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. We went there. It was lovely weather when we went there. I think that's where I've got hay fever from, because we were wandering through a field full of hay. I know hay fever doesn't only come from long grass, it comes from all sorts of other plants, trees, weeds such as plantain. It comes from all sorts of things, pollen in the air. I don't know why I've got this. I've never had hay fever. Anyway, that I think is a result of going to Pulborough Brooks. But it was lovely, and I did a recording. I hope it doesn't bore you. I don't want to bore you all. You do know that, don't you? So have a listen to my quick journey through Pulborough Brooks with Tricia. If you get a bit bored, you just whiz on, like the old reel-to-reel tape recorders. Press fast forward and then join me again after my visit to Pulborough Brooks. I think you'll find it interesting. I hope so. I'm standing by a pond looking for newts. Bit of a breeze here. What a lovely place, though. We're going to become members. We're going to pay an annual thing to become members. Fantastic place. Just past Storrington, just north of Storrington, West Sussex. Haven't seen any newts yet. I've taken a few photos, which will be on the website, of course. I can hear a church bell in the distance. Fantastic view from here. There's a herd of cows over there. That's my radio. I've tuned into their frequency so I can hear what's going on. Well, you know me. I don't know what birds they are. Got an aeroplane in the background now. I think that was a blackbird. We've seen a rabbit. We've seen a squirrel. I saw a water boatman on the pond. A magpie. And various other birds. I don't know what they are. I haven't seen any brown or black bears yet. My son says they're in the mountains in North Carolina. He's going to get a photo of one or two of them when he can. Fortunately, there aren't any here. Or grizzly bears. I don't want to bump into a grizzly in the woods. What a lovely place. We're not far from the Gliders Club at Storrington, and I've just seen a glider being pulled along by an aircraft and then released so he can go up on the thermals. I should have bought my aircraft radio. Then I could have chatted to the glider pilot. How are you doing up there? Actually, that's not allowed, so I wouldn't do that. Going deeper into the woods now. There's a little bit of a wind getting up, which is unfortunate. You wouldn't think it's July, would you? British summer, well, I suppose you would. We've got aircraft coming out of Gatwick Airport, which is a fair way north of us.
But of course, as they fly south, they come over here. Some lovely bird song around. I'll try and get some in a minute. There's a bug hotel, which is basically a load of old pallets all piled up, and then bugs live in there. Bits of wood, bits of broken pottery, old roof tiles all stacked up, I should say. This is a wonderful place, and not too far from where we live. Now here's a hawthorn tree, which I think I mentioned recently. It was known as the poor man's bread and cheese. So you can eat the leaves and the berries. The leaves were the bread, and the berries, which aren't ripe yet, they were the cheese. So that's nice. There we are. If you get a bit peckish, you could have a poor man's bread and cheese sandwich.
I'm going to butt in here to say don't try this at home. I don't want you to go through the woods picking berries and eating them and leaves from things. You shouldn't eat things, so don't try this at home. Right, let's go back to the woods.
Now, I've lost Tricia. She's gone off somewhere. There goes another aeroplane out of Gatwick. What was that bird? What's that one called? Come on, sing again. Anyone know what that is? Wonder whether Chris Packham is listening. He would know. Off we go again. We're standing a few feet away from a squirrel. He's on a log, just looking at us. It's only a few feet away. Morning. Someone spoke to me. I thought I could hide in the woods. Obviously not. The squirrel's gone now. No, there's another one. He's on a gate over there. Tricia's gone right up to him to see whether she can get a close-up photo. If she does, I'll put that on the website. The funny thing is, this is just up the road from us, where we live. And we've never been here. It's no further than Amberley Museum, back of Arundel. And we've never been here. I'd never heard of it. Neither of us had heard of it till someone mentioned Pulborough Brooks. And I was saying, well, what's that? Where's that then? Haven't you been there? Well, no, I haven't. If I had, I wouldn't be asking, would I? Tricia's found someone to talk to. I'm escaping. Where I see people, I go in the opposite direction. I feel like a twitcher. Is that a bird watcher? Do they call them twitchers? Or nerds or something? No, amateur radio, ham radio is nerd, isn't it? Twitchers. Birders or something. Now, what's this down here? There's a pond. A dried up pond. Won't be much to see in there. Listen to those birds. I tell you what, I could get a wooden hut, a cabin. A cabin would be nice, like they have in the mountains in North Carolina. And I could live in the cabin, miles away from people. Now there's a dream. There'll be a picture on the website of this little hanger hide. Tricia's at the door. Look at that. Just look at that. Imagine living there. I could put notices around. Trespassers will be shot. And I could live in there, just Trish and me living in there. I'm going to go inside, see what's in there. Let's open the door. Here we are. Trish is already in here. It's a hide full of birds, pictures in spring, birds in summer, autumn, winter. Fantastic place. We could have the kitchen at the far end, then the bedroom there, a bathroom at the other end, and a lounge here in the middle. Wonderful. I shall take a picture of the inside for the website so you can see what will be our new home. We're now walking across a field and it's raining. And it's raining quite hard. This is the British summer. I've often talked about. Hopefully it's only a shower. Tricia is at a Y junction looking at the map. Oh, now she's smashing down a gate. I shall follow her. Oh, and here comes an aeroplane pulling another glider up into the air. You can hear the plane with a glider behind it. The gate's being held open for me. Thank you. So Tricia's got the map, so we could end up in Croydon, possibly Devon. Happy days. We're just looking at a squirrel with a mouthful of bits and pieces, looks like, for his nest. They're not called nests, are they? They're just sitting on a log, staring at us. I'm looking over to the west. I've put a picture on the website. There's some ponds or wetland, and there's a town, or well, it looks like a town over there. I'm not sure where that is. I think, according to my compass, I'm looking over to the west. Trish is taking a photo of a blue tit. You know, I've said before about wherever you go, you can hear man-made sounds. Well, this time it's not traffic. It's aeroplanes coming out of Gatwick. Every few seconds another plane goes overhead. But not to worry, I shall find out what town that is. Later I shall look on the map when I get home. I'm right in the woods now. Rather nice. I don't know what bird that is. I'll try and find out.
If you want to have a look at the RSPB website, I've put a link on the photos page. I've put photos on already, so you can have a look there. Thoroughly enjoyed that day. As I said, it's only up the road from us. And luckily, it wasn't, as today, lashing with rain. It's dreadful out there. Not to worry. Perhaps my hay fever will disappear. Isn't that strange, having hay fever? Must be walking through that field, because there was long grass, wild flowers everywhere, amazing. The birds were singing beautifully, and apart from the aeroplanes coming out of Gatwick every few minutes, or few seconds, is it every 30 seconds one lands or takes off? I think I read somewhere every 30 seconds. Crazy. Can't get away from man-made noises. Just going back to the weather for a minute, up at Capel, that's C-A-P-E-L, in Surrey, look it up on the map, there's a vintage vehicle show, jeeps, army lorries, all sorts of stuff, for the whole weekend. Brother-in-law and sister-in-law have gone up there in their jeep, taken their little caravan, they're staying there for the weekend, and it's lashing with rain. Had a message this morning saying it's pouring with rain here, the rain is very loud on the caravan roof. Of course, the trouble is, even if it stops raining now and the sun comes out, the field is wet, muddy, everything's ruined. Isn't it hopeless? You cannot plan anything outside in Britain. You can have a red-hot Saturday and think, this is wonderful. Tell you what, tomorrow, Sunday, let's have a barbecue. Don't try planning that, because on the Sunday, there'll be monsoons, snow, blizzards, typhoons, anything. You can bet your life the sun will disappear. As soon as you think of the word barbecue, the weather seems to hear you. They're going to have a barbecue. Right, there's rain. Just can't plan anything here. It's a shame, because it's a massive show that they've got on up there with the classic cars, I believe, as well as military vehicles. So there we are. Nothing you can do about it. No good moaning. Sit in the caravan, have a few beers. I think that's the answer. Gordon, nice to hear from you. You're talking about pubs, or rather you're talking about me talking about pubs all the time. He says it seems that back in your day, pubs were the centre of everything. They were, Gordon. They were the community hub, if you like, especially a village pub. Everyone in the village knew the pub. They went to the pub. Well, not everyone. One or two teetotalers, no doubt. But people would congregate. They'd gather in the local pub. And even in a town like mine, we had our pub where we were called locals and regulars. That was our pub. And we'd meet there, especially on a Friday night. You've been at work all week. It's the weekend. So you meet in the pub, perhaps, 8 o'clock? And you chat about your week. What was it like? Oh, he got the sack. So-and-so got the sack. Oh, no, what are you going to do now? So-and-so was promoted and this has happened and that has happened. Someone's got a new car. There was a gathering of people in the pub, and it was more like a club, a community, which it was. It was the centre of the community. I know that there were a lot of pubs, but each pub had its own gathering of locals, their regulars. In the week, for example, Wednesday, when it was a pretty quiet night in the pub, they would have quiz night. Pub quizzes, I think Trish read this to me the other day. I think they started way before the 20s. Was it 1800 and something? I can't remember. But quizzes have been around for decades. It's like the music quiz at our club. It does attract a lot of people. This is on a Friday night, so it is the end of the week. But I think even on a Wednesday during the week, they have various things going on just to get people into the place. Sadly, as you know, Gordon, thanks for contacting me, by the way. Sadly, as I'm always on about, the pubs are disappearing. Hundreds since January, hundreds of pubs have closed down. I think it was 10 a week, wasn't it? Something like that, I can't remember now. But they're just closing down left, right and centre, which is such a shame. Going back a few decades, the pub quizzes often had a sheet of A4 paper, badly photocopied. There's photographs of celebrities or whatever, and you have to identify them. You have to put a name to each picture. The trouble is they were so badly photocopied, black and white, awful, you couldn't work out who it was, even when someone said that's so-and-so. Well, it doesn't look like it at all. You just couldn't tell. But it was good fun. Someone mentioned record shops the other day in the 60s and 70s. You could go into a record shop where all they did was sell records, that was it. No such thing as CDs and all that nonsense. Vinyl, full of vinyl. And you could go in there and say, I'd like to listen to, I don't know, Hey Jude by the Beatles. They'd put the record on for you and you go into a booth. They'd say, go into booth number 2. You go in there, put headphones on, and you could listen to the record. Then you go back to the counter, I'm not buying that, don't like that one. Or, yes, I'll have that one please, and you'd buy the record. It was really good way of doing it. Of course, the booths were always full of people. It attracted people to the record store. Sadly, they've all gone now. There's nothing left. Didn't we do a podcast episode recently? Do you remember? We were talking about what's left or what's disappeared. Everything's gone. Local post office, local police station, record stores, everything's gone. I don't know. What is going to be left? Of course, now we've got a new government. No, don't. I'm not going to talk about that. Let's see what sort of mess, a disaster. No, what's the word I'm looking for? Let's see what they do. Let's see what comes of this new government that we're having. Trish and I were having a coffee the other day in a little coffee shop place. Not Costa or any of that stuff. I don't like all that. Just a little privately owned coffee shop, rather nice. And on the table next to us were some people talking about TV adverts. So Trish and I were listening intently. And what they were saying was they play games. Advert comes on, you have to guess what they're advertising. And it really did strike a chord with me, because so often I'm watching the telly, an advert will come on, and you see a person climbing a mountain or sitting on a cloud or something, or swimming in the sea, and the advert goes on, there's music and things happening. And I'm wondering, what are they advertising? And Trish and I will say, what is it? She might say, it's a car advert. And I'm thinking, no, it's not a car advert. I think it's butter, isn't it? That's the countryside, cows, butter. And it turns out to be something completely different anyway. Why do they do that? That is weird. These people on this other table, apparently they play this game and guess the advert. I thought that was quite funny. Don't know whether I told you some time ago, a year ago I think, I was in a friend's shop just chatting to him about things, and the window had been broken, unfortunately. Overnight some vandals had kicked the window in, and he was waiting for the glazier people to turn up. Anyway, a customer came in, and the customer said to this friend of mine, has the window been broken? Can you believe it? You know, I've been talking recently about you mowing the lawn, and a neighbour will say, are you mowing the lawn? No, of course I'm not mowing the lawn. I'm putting up a TV aerial on the chimney. What's it look like? I've got a lawnmower in my hand. You're cleaning your car. Oh, are you cleaning your car? No, I'm mowing the lawn. So this customer, when he came in, has the window been broken? There's glass everywhere, plate glass window, smashed to bits. Has the window been broken? I thought my friend was going to say something rude to him, but he didn't. He just said, yes, it has. How can I help you? We're still open. Just going back to the election, Bob over there in Washington across the pond, he says his news feed this morning is full of your election coverage. I think everyone's is, Bob, round the world. He says, judging from what I see, my advice is lay in a supply of beer. Yes, already got that in the fridge. Make a collection of tasty things. Yes, we have cakes and snacks. Go to your garden hiding spot and shelter in that place until it's all over. Very good advice, Bob. Very good advice. Except it's raining, so it's going to be a bit damp down there. I'll just have to sit here in the high-tech studio, eat snacks and drink beer. I remember election coverage being on the television back in the 60s and 70s, but of course I was young. I didn't take much notice of it. I'm old now and I still don't take much notice of it. But it was different then. They had a thing on the telly called a swing-ometer. Now, if you're in Britain, you might remember that swing-ometer. Was that the 70s? I forget the chap's name. So you get seats in a certain town would all swing one way or swing the other way. And he had this swing-ometer thing, black and white telly, totally boring. No wonder pubs did so well during election time back in those days. I wonder if they did well at this election. When was it? Thursday evening. The TV was just full of election rubbish. I wonder whether the pubs did well. We're back to pubs again. Hello, Gordon. It's me again talking about pubs. They really were the the centre of the local community back then, as I said. So that's why they're always cropping up in almost every podcast episode, because they were so important back in the old days. They really were. This is the last thing I'll mention about politics. I keep getting news flashes. Here we are, another one here. Oh, the Rishi Sunak chap has resigned. Well, I'm not surprised. Who would be a politician? It must be awful. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. That's it. No more talk about that rubbish from now on. Just one more thing about Pulborough Brooks. The chap there we were talking to, he said that a white-tailed eagle was spotted there recently. It was seen soaring through the sky, which of course excited everyone there, all the people. They're dedicated people, aren't they? They're not all volunteers. I think he was paid, but a lot of them are volunteers, and they're dedicated people. It's rather nice that we've got that sort of thing. The last pair bred on Culver Cliff, he was telling us, on the Isle of Wight. Now, I don't know when that was. Did he say 1700 and something? I can't remember what he said now. But Culver Cliff, that's where we go, Culver down, to the pub up the top, the restaurant. I've mentioned pubs again. Oh, it's okay, I'm going to talk about pubs, not politics. Pubs again, you see? It's pubs all the time, isn't it? I love it. Except, these days, we don't go to the pub. We only go to our club because the... Can you hear that dog? There's some mad dog in the street now. Talking of animals, I was woken at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's a fox in the garden, shouting his head off. I looked out of the window, there he was, moaning, and I don't know what he was doing, not moaning, making strange fox noises. I told him to clear off, like the old boy that used to hang out of the window when I was a kid. Get off out of here, go and play up outside your own house. So I told the fox off, and what did he do? Just stood there in the middle of the lawn looking at me, with his big eyes, just looking. Go on, I said, clear off. People are asleep. No response whatsoever. I would encourage foxes to come into the garden. I would feed them, leave food out for them. But the trouble is they chew up everything. Wires to outside lights and things. They chew everything in sight. We did have a regular visitor, a fox. He was lovely. And the wire to the pond pump, he chewed it, so I repaired it. He chewed it again. And this time I buried it. And he was trying to dig it up. So I blocked off the hole where he used to come into the garden. I made a special hole in the fence for foxes, hedgehogs, and whoever else wanted to come in. Of course, we had a cat come in as well. I won't tell you what he did all over the place, but you can guess. So I had to block up the hole again. But I wouldn't mind the fox coming back in. They're lovely, aren't they, foxes? Do you remember in the old days, people would say, oh, Fred, he keeps all his money under the mattress. Everyone seemed to keep money under the mattress. People didn't like banks back then. I don't think people like banks now. We were at our bank years ago, decades ago. I forget what it was about. And Trish did a lot of the talking. And this chap looked at me and he said, you all right? I said, no, I don't like banks. And he said, okay. I think he took it personally. He didn't like it, because after that he wouldn't even look at me. I was going to carry on to say I don't like banks because they're the biggest thieves in the land. I didn't say that, though, because I thought I'd probably get thrown out. People keeping money under the mattress. Good idea, a lot of cash under the mattress. But there's a problem. Burglars know where it is. It's either under the mattress or in the tea caddy. In the kitchen or the dining room, you've got a tea caddy on the mantelpiece or on the shelf. You know what a tea caddy is, don't you? No, it's a tin, a round or square long tin with a lid. You take it off and in there are tea leaves. And a tea spoon, not a little teaspoon you eat boiled eggs with, but a proper tea caddy type spoon where you spoon the tea into the teapot. This is when tea was made properly, before tea bags came along and ruined everything. So money was either under the mattress or in the tea caddy. I remember being round a friend's house when I was 12, something like that, 12 years old, and his mother said, could you just go up the shop and get whatever it was? And she took this tea caddy down from the shelf and she took some money out of it. And I saw in there were pound notes, 10-shilling notes. Do you remember those? 10-shilling notes, those were the days. And she gave him money out of this tea caddy and put it back on the shelf. And I remember thinking, that is a daft place to keep it. Burglars know. And of course, back then, I'm not saying there were loads of burglaries back then, but houses were very, very easy to break into. These days, with double glazing, it's very difficult to get in. You can't just break the window. They're double glazed. They're very strong. But back then, we had these old crittle windows. Do you remember crittle windows? You could poke something thin, like a piece of card, and lift the latch and then just open the window and step in. And of course, the first place burglars looked was under the mattress or in the tea caddy or a tin somewhere in the kitchen. Here's the thing. A friend of mine told me at school his dad buried money in the garden. And I thought he was mad. I said, what do you mean, how can you bury money in the garden? It'll get wet. No, he said, in a special box. He's got it buried in the garden. I thought that was a daft idea, burying it in the garden. And I told my dad that evening. And he said, that's a good idea. Imagine if your house burns down, got all your money under the mattress. You've lost it. If you've got it in a tin, chances are that it'll be lost. You've got pound notes, 10-shilling notes in a tin. If the house burns down, they probably won't survive. Also, burglars aren't going to go round at night, are they, with a torch and a spade, digging up your garden. So it's a good idea. And I was round this friend's house one weekend, and I said, where's this money then that your dad buries? Oh, I'll show you, he said, come down here to the garden. We went to the end of the garden, and there were several paving slabs with pots on. He lifted the pot off one of the slabs, lifted the slab up, and there's a hole in the ground. So it wasn't buried actually in the earth. It was in a hole under a paving slab. And in this hole was a box. And he said, that's where all my dad's money is, and his gold watch. And his dad came down the garden. What are you doing? Don't show people where I've hidden all my treasure. I said, it's all right, I won't tell. And he said, no, I know you won't, he said, but I don't want everyone knowing. I could easily have nipped back that evening when it was dark and stolen his box of buried treasure. Apparently, that wasn't at all uncommon. People did bury money in the garden and other valuables, whatever they had, diamond ring or whatever you've got, you would bury it. It sounds daft, but when you think about it, it's a good idea. Because initially I thought, well, that is mental. It's out in the open. All people have got to do is lift the paving slab and they've got the cash. But of course, if you don't know about it, where are you going to start in the garden? Is it in the shed, the garage, in the greenhouse, in a flower pot? You could spend all day digging holes around the garden and looking for it and not find it. Another thing, now this is daft. Do you remember in the old days, the key to the front door would be on a piece of string? So you put your hand through the letterbox, feel this piece of string and pull the front door key out, unlock the door and let yourself in. How mad is that? The amount of people that did that. I remember going round to friends' houses and you'd see inside the front door a bit of string right by the letterbox with a key hanging on it, on the end of it. Madness. And another place for the front door key was under the front door mat. Lift the mat up and there's the key. Well, burglars know all about that, don't they? They're not daft. They might be crooks, but they're not daft. Or the key would be under a flower pot or in a flower pot. It's madness, really. Years ago at another house, what we used to do was we'd have a key outside, but not under the doormat or a flower pot near the front door. If you go around the side of the house, there was like a wooden box that we kept garden stuff in. If you lift the box up, it was quite heavy, but lift one end of the box up and the front door key was under there. The chances of anyone lifting that box up to find a key, pretty near zero really, the chances of that. But of course the family knew where it was, so if anyone turned up, they were early, if they were coming round, we were out or whatever, they could get in, they knew where the key was. I learned a lesson a few decades ago. We had foreign students, only a couple of foreign students, because we had a spare room. Now they didn't have a key to the house, I didn't want to give them a key, because I worked from home anyway, so I was there most of the time. But I popped over the shops to get some milk. I remember this vividly. When I got back, the two students, these lads, they were lovely lads, they were great, but they were in the house. And I said, how did you get in? And he said, well, the front door. And I said, no, but you haven't got a key. How did you open the front door? And he showed me. He said, oh, come, I show you. I think he was he French? I don't know what he was. Anyway, we went outside, shut the front door, and I said, well, go on then, how did you get in? I felt such a fool. It was so simple. He got a credit card or whatever it was, poked it through the little slot, the latch opened and the door opened. He just pushed the latch back and the door opened. So after that, I made it so you couldn't poke anything through that slot. But how easy it was. And funnily enough, a few weeks later, the lady over the road, she came over. She said, I've locked myself out. I don't know what to do. She was on her own. She was an elderly lady. Her husband had long since passed away. So I said, well, I can try and open the door for you. We went over there. I got a credit card and I did exactly the same thing. And she said, how did you do that? I explained to her what I'd done. And she said, well, anyone could do that. Anyone could get into my house. I said, yes, they could. All they need is a card. It was dreadful, really, because these days there are deadlocks and things. So it's all very different. But back then, that's all you do. Just slide a little bit of plastic card into the slot where the latch is. It pushes the latch back and the door opens. You may have heard people saying, oh, in my day, we used to leave the front door open. We'd pop out to the shops. No need to lock the door. You could trust people back then. That was true up to a point. I mean, you wouldn't leave the front door wide open if you're going into town for 3 or 4 hours. You wouldn't do that. This hay fever's getting worse. Perhaps it's COVID, I don't know. But I do remember people, not necessarily the front door, but some places had a side front door, if you like, a sort of back door that was at the side. We had a bungalow like that. And that door was often left open, even if you just popped down the road to the shops or to post a letter. You didn't lock that. Yes, there were burglaries back then, of course there were, but I think people were a lot more trusting then. Neighbours would wander in and out of each other's houses. I remember that. I'd be in the kitchen and someone would wander through from the front door. Hi Ray, how you doing? Oh, hello, yeah, come in, do you want a coffee? When I say come in, they're already in. They're in the kitchen. You know, they come through the hall to the kitchen. They're in the house and there's me saying come in. But it was like that back then. I don't think that happens now, unless you've got neighbours that you're very, very close to. Then, if there's a back way in, perhaps from their garden to yours, they might come and wander in the kitchen. That's different. Of course, these days, everyone, well, not everyone, but most people have got some sort of security alarm. You can buy these Chinese things, can't you, on eBay or wherever from. Stick a sensor in every room, then the main unit you plug in. Any movement in any of the rooms and the thing goes off. We've got one. I added a lot of electronic stuff to it because it was a bit basic. There was no outside bell box, as they call it. It was just the woo-woo thing that went off indoors, which isn't very loud, so I built an extra unit on it, which then supplies boxes back and front of the building, flashing lights on it, and woo-woo-woo sounds like that are really piercing. And sometimes it'll go off at night, but that's because I've got a sensor on the patio. So you get a fox or something on the patio or a cat skulking around, it'll set the alarm off. But it doesn't matter, it doesn't happen that often. Also got sensors in the sheds. We've got various sheds down the garden. Got sensors there as well. So if the tortoise is wreaking havoc down there, stomping around the shed, no, he can't get out of his home bit, but if anyone tries to break into the shed, that one will go off. And of course with double glazing, as I said, you can't easily get into that. The front and back doors are double glazed. It's all very different these days. In the old days you could, with a credit card, either open the front door, open the cradle window and just step in to the property and take what you wanted to. Mind you, people didn't have a lot of stuff to nick back then. You didn't have, in the 50s and 60s, there weren't video recorders, mobile phones, computers, not all this expensive kit. It just wasn't, it didn't exist, obviously, back then. So what was there to pinch? Well, possibly the television, which was a huge wooden box in a weighed a ton, this huge, great television. People weren't going to steal that. They'd look around for money, of course. Or possibly if someone had a nice record collection or some hi-fi equipment, that could get stolen. But in the main, people didn't have anything to steal. In the 50s and 60s, most people didn't have a great deal of money. A lot of people didn't have any money. Now for something completely different. We were watching a programme on telly, and I said to Trish, is this a comedy? She said, no, it's a drama. Do you know, I often wonder, because you're watching a programme and there are mistakes made in it and people say daft things, and I'm thinking, oh, this is a comedy. But it's not. It's a serious drama programme. I don't know who writes some of this stuff these days, but they should take up fishing instead of writing. I've often thought that, and Trish has said the same. We're watching something and she says, oh, you're like this, it's a comedy. And I've said, no, it's not. It's not meant to be. It might be funny, but it's not supposed to be funny. I don't know what's happened to TV these days. I know I bang on about Talking Pictures TV, which is in the UK. You might get it wherever you are. But Talking Pictures TV, they have all the old stuff. You know, I've said about Dixon of Dock Green and various other programmes. Films from the 1930s. Black and white films where the soundtrack sounds awful. All this business. And the picture, the black and white picture's flickering. But it's great. I love all that stuff. I'd far rather watch that than some modern rubbish. I was hoping to go out today for a walk, possibly go up to Pulborough Brooks again. It's a 25-mile round trip, so it's not far, is it? But we've had more lashing rain overnight. The wind out there is dreadful. It's 16 degrees out on the patio. 16. I mean, OK, it's not cold, but it's hardly midsummer type temperature, is it? Everyone's getting fed up with this weather. They talk about climate change and all this business, which I'm not going to talk about, don't worry. But I wonder whether it is happening because it's getting cooler. So Pulborough Brooks, I think we're going to have to give that a miss. We'll probably go when we get back from, Butlins, is that B word again? That's if the summer's arrived. The thing about the Brooks place is it's a lovely walk. I know on the recording I did, I'm not very good, as I've said before, at describing things without video. Obviously with video you can see what I'm talking about. But when it's just audio and I'm telling you what I'm looking at, I'm not very good at that yet. Hopefully I will improve. Bear with. Do you remember that programme? What was it? Miranda Hart, wasn't it? Where that woman would say, bear with. And she'd say, I'm just going to go what I call shopping. Well, everyone calls it shopping. I just found that funny. I have a strange sense of humour. Bear with. I like that. When we used to go to the wetlands at Arundel and now Pulborough Brooks, you see these, are they twitchers, the birders, the people that look at birds? They've got cameras with huge lenses on them. Massive lenses, about 300 feet long, well, not quite, hanging around their necks, and binoculars, huge binoculars and all this other gear. It's all very expensive. And you see them leaning on a fence post somewhere, focusing on some distant bird and taking photographs. Fortunately, they don't speak to me, these people. They obviously realise that I'm not a twitcher because all I've got in my hand is a monocular. Have you seen these monocular things? Trish bought it for me ages ago. It's really good. It's not a binocular, as in two things you look through. It's just one, monocular. And it's really good, like a little telescope, but it doesn't actually telescope. It's got an adjustment on it. It's really handy, but I don't know what I'm looking I don't know what I'm looking at. A chap at the wetlands once, he did approach me and he said, what is it? What is it? And I said, what? Looked at him, what? He said, what have you seen? What are you looking at? I said, I've no idea. It's some bird over there. He was not impressed. He looked through his binoculars and he said, oh, well, it's a so-and-so, as if I was mad. I should know that. Anyway, he walked off. I don't think he was at all impressed. and they've got these hides at the wetlands and Pulborough Brooks. They've got these hides. They're basically sheds with a long bench. You sit there and there's an opening. You probably know the sort of thing I mean. And Trish and I will go into one. God, look, this looks good. Look at this in here. And there's perhaps 2 or 3 people there sitting quietly with their cameras and binoculars. And they'll look round. Shh. Oh, sorry. We sneak out again. We don't deliberately do that. We don't do that anymore. But the first few times, we sort of new to the wetlands, we'd go charging into one of these huts. God, this looks good in here. Shh. Dear. I don't know. Happy days. We don't now. What we'll do is sneak in there, look in the door. No, there's no one in there. Then go in and say, God, this is good. It's the same with fishermen. Coarse fishing, I mean, not sea fishing. You're walking along by a lake or a riverbank or something, and it's all quiet and calm, and there's this fisherman there watching his float, and then a family will come along with kids, they're bouncing around and shouting and screaming, and you see the fisherman's face grimacing because the fish are aware of that. They feel the vibrations through the ground and they can hear the screaming in the water from the children. But of course, the countryside is for everyone, isn't it? It's not just for anglers and twitchers and any other strange sort of pursuits that people have. The country folk don't like townies. They're called townies, aren't they? People that live in towns and cities. They know nothing about the countryside. But on a nice summer's day, they'll take their dogs and their kids and go and wreak havoc in the quiet, peaceful lakeside, where people are fishing, or where it's all quiet in the woods and people are looking at birds through their binoculars. And you've got this family turn up with their dogs yapping. Or people like me with their recorder in the woods having a quiet chat about, look at that, isn't this bird song wonderful? And look at that there, oh, it's wonderful. Then you've got a load of kids turn up with their mum and dad and dogs shouting. So I know what it's like. But of course, as I say, the countryside is for everyone, not just strange people like me. Talking of the countryside, sister and brother-in-law, or sister-in-law and brother-in-law, they're still in their caravan up at Capel in Surrey. It's Dorking, actually. Capel is a little village just by Dorking. Look it up on the map. And last night, again, we had rain, thunderstorms. Goodness knows how they're doing up there. They're on our family WhatsApp group, and they have said that there's a lot of mud around. Lots of mud. We're off to Haywoods Heath today. Did I tell you that? Probably. I do tend to get repetitive in my old age. Off to Haywoods Heath, daughter number 2. Birthday party and various other celebrations going on there. So that will be fun. The trouble is there's lots of cake there. Trish has made cakes. Daughter number 3, who has just opened a cake shop. She's just opened a cake shop in Worthing, my hometown, and it is literally, 5-10 minute walk from here. So I seem to be putting on a few pounds. Anyway, her and her friend, they've opened the shop together. They're both bakers or cakers. What are they? They're not twitchers. They bake cakes, so they must be cakers. They're very good decorating cakes. All these strange cakes these days that they do with Ninja Turtles on, or Batman and Robin, Spider-Man cakes, all this sort of thing. They do that. And they've actually opened a shop, which is doing very well. The trouble is, I'm supposed to be losing weight, but with them round the corner baking cakes, it's very tempting to nip round there and have a look to see how they're getting on. And of course, I'm chief taster, so I have to try out the cakes. And at Haywoods Heath this afternoon, there's a load of cakes there. Now, it must be me, because Tricia, in the last, few months, has lost a stone in weight. She didn't really need to lose it. Anyway, she's lost a stone in weight. And she says, look, I've got these cakes in front of me, as well as you. It's not just you. I've got cakes in front of me, but I don't keep pigging them. That's why I've lost a stone, and that's why you've put on a few pounds, because you do keep pigging them. It's difficult, isn't it? Dieting. I think I hate that word, dieting. My mum has spent her entire life dieting. I remember I must have been, 5 years old, when she used to say, I'm dieting. And she has been saying that her entire life. Even now, in fact, recently she has said, I'm not dieting anymore. And I have said, well, I don't believe that. You've been dieting since I was 5 years old. You're now 90. I'm in my 70s. You're still dieting. Anyway, I should have to eat cakes this afternoon because it's a birthday celebration. It would be rude not to. In the old days, here we go again, when I was a boy, people had all sorts of cakes. They did. My nan, my mum's mum, my old nan, as we called her, she passed away at 97. She was overweight all her life. Her diet was dreadful. She worked in a bakery, Wilson's in Surrey, Sutton in Surrey, Wilson's. I think it was like a cafe and a bakery, and she was in the back section baking, making cakes, making sandwiches, and of course she would eat away all day. She's eating cakes and bits and pieces, terribly overweight. Her diet was awful, and yet she was healthy. Although overweight, she was healthy, and she lived to 97, a ripe old age. She didn't smoke or drink, but she was healthy. I don't think she ever got ill. I don't remember her being ill. I remember going to her house up in Sutton in Surrey, and she had this sort of pantry thing, and in there was a chicken carcass covered in flies, a bowl of dripping with blowflies everywhere. Now, recently, people have said to me that I don't get out enough and my immune system is low. Well, it's not, for a start. It's not low at all. This is hay fever I've got. It's not a cold. People are saying, oh, no, you've got a cold. No, I haven't. The family have been saying that I should get out and about more, build up my immune system. I do. I haven't spent my life sitting indoors hiding from germs. I've been all sorts of places. I've mixed with people. I've been everywhere, breathing in germs, touching germs and all sorts. But I do think, though, these days that everything is a little bit too hygienic. And it's not just me. I've heard people on the telly talking about it. So it must be true. If it's been on the telly, it must be true. And in the newspaper. Do you read newspapers anymore? In the old days, everyone had a newspaper, didn't they? Everyone in the street. I had a paper round. I had a huge bag full of papers every morning. And just about every house in the street, I'm delivering papers. All around several streets. It took me ages. These days, I think there are paper boys and girls. Sorry, paper people. They are around, but nothing like they used to be. I don't know that people buy newspapers, do they? Actually, my mother-in-law, she still has a newspaper. Yeah, she likes her newspaper, but I don't think it's anything like it used to be. Because people only had, back then, in the 50s, they only had the radio, the wireless, and newspapers. Television started coming in, so you'd get news on there, but nothing like today where, well, as you know, my watch flashes up with some news item or something. This has happened or that has happened somewhere in the world. Back then, there was just no news outlet apart from radio and newspapers. One more weather report. The wind is dreadful from the west. Black clouds whizzing across the sky. Just check the temperature. It's crept up to 17. Heat wave. Struth, 17 degrees in July. How are you doing down in Australia? Is your midwinter now, isn't it? I bet it's in its 30s down there. This isn't good enough, you know. I'm going to have to complain to my MP. Oh, I mentioned MP, sorry. I've bored you enough. Thank you for listening, as always. I don't know how you do it. I really don't. Well over 400 episodes, and I know a lot of you have listened to every single episode. Struth, I really don't know how you do it. Well done. Congratulations. Behave yourselves. If you can't, then don't get caught. I will see you on Wednesday with the midweek message. Have a look at the photos that I've put on of Pulborough Brooks. If you're that way inclined, you might not want to see them. That's on raiserants.info, raiserants.info. If you want to email me, well, you know all this, don't you? raiserants@protonmail.com. Thanks for listening. Look after yourselves. Take care. Bye-bye for now.